Hello, everybody. I hope all of you are doing well. Welcome to the Quarantine Collector's ongoing reading of Klossowski, Nietzsche's Vicious Circle, Nietzsche and the Vicious Circle, by Pierre Klossowski. Sorry for the slightly late start. We're getting going. I kind of just want to mostly dive in because last week we ended in a middle of a point, but it's actually a thing I kind of want to take a step and go back over. So we'll do that a little bit. As always, if you have questions, comments, any other rando things, feel free to jump in and just say, hey, what the fuck? And you here in Discord, if you want to join us, Discord.gg/, you're more than welcome to. Blue hue in the room today. I don't think that's good for that. Right? I need to change my white balance on my camera. It's okay. It's got kind of a nice moody tone to it. I'm going to leave it for now. But we are going to head over to the reading. Okay. One sec. I have a monster. Yes, my friend. I am reading right now. You want to join me for this complicated reading of French philosophy? No? I found it's easier than just saying get out of here, is if I actually invite them to do my horrifyingly boring thing. So far, it's very effective. Because I'm being invited. It's like a positive thing, right? I hope it is. I don't know. He'll be fucking laying on some couch in 30 years. My dad would always invite me to things. He asked me to do this. It'll be something. Klossowski is taking us through Nietzsche's revisiting of the will, specifically will as in the impulses, Nietzsche's will to power. Camera color balance is eerie, isn't it? I think I can fix that. Let's see if I can play with it a little bit. It's a little haunting. It's really bringing out the blue in my eyes. It's not like it's incorrect colors. This is the tie-dye shirt. Everything's like correct, but there's like a bluish tint. One sec, let me see if I can fix that. Bring out more yellow in the light. Maybe just brightness. Let's do more brightness. Eyes are all blue. It's like I'm having spice melange. We'll just go with it. It works. There's only so much I can do. I have to fuck with my camera afterwards. Nietzsche's will, the underlying forces at play that ultimately develop into all of these complex things that Klossowski's going through. One of the things he specifically has been drawing out here, and we're kind of talking through Zarathustra mostly in this section, because he's trying to communicate the idea of the eternal return, the experience of it, the elaboration of the experience of the eternal return. And the discussion he's having and Klossowski's pulling out of this, and I think it's, again, it'll help as we get all the way through this little area. He is basically pulling out the idea that as Nietzsche is going through and describing all of the eternal return elements, he's not so much like telling us what it is, as much as trying to communicate the experience of it. That would be I think I'll just leave it there as a thing. Specifically in this section, he's focusing on will. And how Zarathustra talks about will specifically. Zarathustra makes the claim at some point that we are enslaved to the irreversibility of time. I'm just going to skip through a handful of paragraphs here. Zarathustra considers the will as being enslaved to the irreversibility of time. This is the first reflective reaction to the obsessional evidence. Zarathustra's remedy is to re-will the non-will, inasmuch as he desires to assume the accomplished fact himself, thereby rendering it unaccomplished by re-willing it innumerable times. The once and for all character of the event is being played with here. Now, specifically what's happening here is there's a handful of sort of plays that Nietzsche's making as he's doing this. And Klossowski is talking through sort of the critique over time as Nietzsche's developing what is the eternal return and trying to express this. So, for example, for Zarathustra, the will feels powerless by the way that time is irreversible. This is one of the sort of core functions of the will as Nietzsche's gone through it. And as such, there's a resent that is built against existence itself as it sort of functions and as it works. Music's too loud. Fuck, I forgot to mute the music. Thank you. God damn it. Of course. One sec. Fuck. One sec. I thought I had a script for this. Did the script not trigger? It's okay. It's okay, Brooks. No one cares. No one cares, Brooks. No one gives a fuck. Hopefully that's a little bit better. I'll bring YouTube chat to the front and center. Where the fuck did I hide you was the first question, though. Over here. Oh, you were underneath the window. That's just useful, Brooks. Well done. That's okay. Hello. And thanks for coming and letting me know. Planet. Love you. All right, I'll start somewhat over then, because no one could hear anything. We're going through, and Nietzsche's going through, the nature of how the will is coming through in Nietzsche's experience and explanation of the experience of the eternal return. We're opening and talking mostly about his earlier attempts. Zarathustra is very much this. His writings of Zarathustra are about how to handle the will, how to handle the passage of time, how to break resentment and things like this. Specifically, Klossowski's focusing on the passages where the character of Zarathustra, the prophet, is demanding that we re-will that which we did not will, the non-willed, which means effectively that we consciously affirm everything that happened, everything that has happened, and we do so to like an infinite degree, forever. What this does is it changes our passive suffering into an active affirmation. That's my shortest way I can sum up Zarathustra's idea here. And Klossowski is kind of taking it to task. That's kind of the idea. The first critique Klossowski is kind of bringing out here, and we're going to be going through all of these, is that remedy here is actually using willing to solve a problem caused by itself. But the idea that you might put it another way, in which I think it establishes the critique more clearly. Hey, just choose to enjoy the things you didn't choose. But wait, I didn't choose them, so how do I choose to enjoy them? Clearly, I didn't choose them, so how do I choose? It defeats itself in its own structure. You become trapped in well, these are the things I have resentment against, the will has built against. These are the things I must affirm, but you didn't choose those in the first place. So now you're choosing to affirm, and it plays into this really weird revenge structure itself, the resentment structure itself, that you're not escaping by staying in that space. The sort of second is the collapse of action and non-action. And this is not the Eastern version of it. Nietzsche does a slightly different play of the traditional sort of way, action through non-action. Because in the Eternal Return, as we've discussed, Nietzsche writes and Klossowski writes that acting and non-acting are effectively the same thing. They are the same thing. There is an equivalence between them, right? The all voluntary action is equivalent to a real non-action, or all conscious non-action is equivalent to an illusory action. The challenge here is that, well, these are expressing underlying states of the intensive. The idea of conscious decision of choosing an action is still an illusion. Again, it's this thing is failing into itself. And that's kind of the critique he runs over and over and over. And he ends with, there's a couple others in here we could go through. We could talk about how there's the paradox of what is created and how things are created. We could talk about the tautological stance. But the thing underneath this that is happening is that Zarathustra is trying to make the Eternal Return a conscious, taught, like teacher to student, or person to, like, adult to child, or experienced master to, like, they want that master, the dialectic to exist there, as if there's a stable subject of Zarathustra in the first place, or a you in the first place, to be able to be the one who's taught or to teach. But the experience itself dissolves this. There is no subjectivity inside of it. You cannot possess a thought any more than you can possess almost anything else, but certainly possessing a thought is its own thing, especially the Eternal Return, though, because by having the thought embodied, you disappear. You become an other inside of the way that this sort of functions. And this back and forth becomes this sort of difficulty in how he's getting it across. So he continues, and this is where I kind of want to go from here. Is that generally, does everyone remember when we were going through this before? And where we're at? Is everyone on board generally with it? YouTube chat has stopped talking. I'm assuming that means that my audio is at least moderately acceptable this time around. Fuck. Is everyone cool? Because I'm going to be burning through the rest of this then. Because we're going to do the tautology, all of this, and the parable of the two paths. And we're going to be continually moving into the idea of what it means to have a individual identity and how that's problematic. And yeah, Klossowski these two paragraphs are pretty fucking great. Really, it's like one sentence in a paragraph, but still pretty fucking good. So without any further ado. Now this tautology is represented both in the sign of the circle and in Nietzsche's own thought by the return of all things, including itself. The parable of two opposed paths coming together under the arch of a gateway on whose pediment is inscribed moment in Zarathustra simply takes up the image of the aphorism in the gay science. The same moonlight, the same spider will return. The two opposed paths are one, but an eternity separates them. Individuals, things, events go up one path and come down the other. Return is the same under the gateway of the moment, having made a tour of eternity. Whoever stops in this gateway is alone capable of grasping the circular structure of eternal time. But here, as in the aphorism, it is still the individual self who leaves and returns identical to itself. Certainly, there is a link between this parable and the will's cure through the rewilling of the past, except that it does not carry on any conviction. There's just a lot said in here. There's just a lot. Okay. The things we're playing with right now is the problem of the identity, because an individual self has to be able to persist through the return in order to affirm it. So someone affirms the return, but also has to be able to dissolve, because that's the implication of the return. So this identity has to return and disappear as like within a consistency of sorts. There is the paradox built into it that knowledge of the eternal return requires this standpoint that is itself impossibly outside time. Despite playing with the redemption of will, which it has, the parable, and we'll go through all of this in the gay science, but the parable itself doesn't actually have transformation or achieve like an existential transformation. And lastly, when we start talking about this, we're talking about a weird play between form and content, because the formulations contradict the implications at a deeper level that the doctrine sort of comes with it, the doctrine of the eternal return. So as we're going through this, keep these in mind as we're sort of plowing through. He opens with the sentence. Now this tautology is represented both in the sign of the circle. Remember the single sign of what this is, in Nietzsche's own thought, by the return of all things, including itself. The doctrine itself, the doctrine of the eternal return, has to return eternally if all things return. This is the tautology is represented. That's the tautology. It's tautological on its face. But it's a weird one. It's an odd version of it, because the thought of the eternal return then is description and participant in what it is describing. Right? The thought itself isn't like some disembodied, oh, I have that and now it's gone, but it's actually like a thing in this. It's a participant in what it is describing. Again, the sign of the circle, same thing. It's a participant, but also the sign of it. These things are not just a geometric circle. That's like the boring version. It's the boring version. It's not just a cosmological model, as most people interpret this, or misinterpret, I'd say. But it's also a structure that devours itself, is always sort of doing that. The Ouroboros is also a circle. These things play in very particular ways. And this odd tautological dimension of everything is different than the normal cyclical ideas of time. The Stoics had ekiperosis, this idea of like almost Big Bang big crunch kind of stuff, or the way that Hindu religions really play into the, I don't know, everything always returns as the cosmological thing that, again, people mistake Nietzsche for doing. But they do these things operate a little bit different, because for Nietzsche, the way cyclical time operates, it works by making thought itself part of the recursive structure. When we talk about the Hindu, sort of understanding of the world, you have like there's a consistent soul that's maybe reincarnated, and you go through infinite things. The world will continue to be. You exist a little bit outside of it. Thoughts of it certainly aren't part of the material of these things. It's certainly not part of the entire thing. For Nietzsche, it is. For Klossowski, especially for Nietzsche, it is, because thought itself is part of the structure. It's necessarily part of the structure. The sign of the circle, Nietzsche's own thought, the return of all things, including itself. Thought itself is part of the recursive structure. The return includes the consciousness, the thinking thing that thinks the eternal return. And Klossowski is pulling this paradox out. This is going to be really important as we get going, but his question is, how can you have a stable subject think a doctrine that dissolves the subject thinking it, and somehow make your way all the way back to having another stable subject that also thinks and dissolves? That's the question he's got. So he goes on to try to begin to answer it. And the chapters after this are going to be doing a lot more to answer it. Right now, he's going through, and we're outlining from Nietzsche and going through his sort of examples. And the parable from Zarathustra that this next one opens up is about the gateway. And he's drawing a parallel that I think is easy to do. This is the gateway on one side, or the demon, with the eternal return as a revelation in the night. Enamored with this abstraction I call bullshit. Good for you, Govan. That's great. This is not normal chat. Don't be a dick in here. We're going through things, and I'm literally reading 2 sentences out of a book. The demon in gay science is that elaboration. The gateway in Zarathustra is effectively a reappearance of this, right? These are connected by Klossowski, and the goal for him is to show that the eternal return developing from this sort of hypothetical thought experiment to something that seems more cosmological. So as we make our way through this is going to be the thing. So let me read, I guess. Do I want to go through and read it fully? No. I'm not going to go through and reread these. I think we did that before. I'm not super in the mood to do it. There's a phrase in this first sentence: the parable of 2 opposite paths, coming together under the arch of a gateway, on whose pediment is inscribed moment in Zarathustra, simply takes up the image of the aphorism in the gay science. Same moonlight, the same spider will return. The moment on the gateway is this point where eternity is converging. This is a Zeno's paradox play of a sort that sort of talks about how there is no moment. Walk through the arch, blah, blah, blah. You'll walk through this idea of where is the moment you're walking through the arch. There is no such thing as someone dying. People are either alive or dead. There is no gateway between them. There is no step, right? There's no like middle ground of like kind of dead. That's a joke from fucking Princess Bride. Would I recommend someone read this book directly to understand Nietzsche? Absolutely not. You should read a lot of Nietzsche way before this. Deny self, you take nothing with you to conform to future you. Govan, we're not doing a random conversation here. This is a reading. Enjoy our reading. Otherwise, you're going to get muted in a minute. In the gay science, there's a moonlight and spider. Like this thing is played. He's drawing parallels between them. The moment that is being played in the gateway is the same sort of thing that's happening as we're talking about in the gay science. This is we're drawing parallels. We're drawing parallels. It's not a present in linear time, this moment, because there is really no such thing. But instead, the gateway is the moment where the vectors of time actually meet, past and future as paths that ultimately are one. That's the two opposed paths, past and future, are one, but an eternity separates them because, again, there is no such thing as a now between them. The moonlight and all of this is about a material sort of specificity because as we're talking about it, it's important to remember this is not an abstract repetition. This is a concrete return of this configuration. So Klossowski is going out of his way here to show that the parallels between the two actually themselves are a demonstration of the eternal return, of the configuration, of those circumstances. Even if there's difference between them, it is still repeating because, as he goes on to say, these two supposed paths are one, eternity separates them. Individuals, things, events go up one path, come down the other, return as the same under the gateway of the moment, having made a tour of eternity. He's really leaning into the sort of paradoxical oddness of this because the two paths, future and past, future past, two paths, are opposing and identical. They're separated, as Zarathustra's thing is that they're separated by an eternity, yet they meet at the moment, the gateway. They meet at the moment. And it's a capital M when I say moment in that because it says moment. Is it inscribed on it? I want to say on it. Again, this is not playing into the easy read, which would be like a dialectical synthesis of things. That's not it. He's talking topologically, just like Deleuze as a thing. He talks a lot topologically. And the way he's going about this is by talking about how those things that go up one side return down the other side as the same, this almost infinite detour that's constantly taking place. And somehow through this, identity has a preservation. Identity is somehow preserved inside of this. Right? But it's these things are transformed. There's a presumption behind this. When he says they return as the same, we want to be asking what returns. Is it an actual identical individual, or is it a configuration that merely resembles that individual from before? All right. Intellectual Joker says, isn't the problem as to understand Deleuze, you need to read Deleuze? I'm asking this is why not abstract over and over, just read secondary literature like this since you cannot read anything. I mean, you cannot read everything. Nietzsche has like 5 works. Go read those. They're pretty easy. We have multiple readings in the QC if you want to go through it. Nietzsche is not a complex. He is complex. I shouldn't say that. Nietzsche is someone to read. But again, if you're wanting to read this stuff, you need to understand philosophy is very similar to any other discipline. If you're at the very end of it and you're like, hey, I really want to get a grasp of string theory, you shouldn't be just watching a YouTube video. You should be reading and understanding math and science and all the things that go into it. For Deleuze, if you really want to understand Deleuze is like endgame philosophy. I mean, now he's not even in game philosophy. There are people who are way beyond that. If you want to understand these people, there's an arrogance in believing that you should be somehow given the ability to, oh, I just read it and I get it. No, go read Ulysses. You can't read Ulysses without a lot of background work. These things are sort of at these moments. This is the same true of art, music, acrobatics, clowning, Video games. You can't presume to be in the top tier of these things and like playing with the top tier of these things without having that background work. My daughter's 3. She's learning to play video games. I'm not putting her on Counter-Strike. A lot of people who forget that to get to Counter-Strike, it ain't your first game. You've got a lot of games behind that and a lot of years before you can even be very good at it. Why would reading Deleuze not be at least more complicated than fucking Counter-Strike? Sorry, apologies to everyone. So he goes on. The phrasing here again, the gateway of the moment made a tour of eternity. Whoever stops in this gateway is alone capable of grasping the circular structure of eternal time. Stopping in the gateway is a trip. At what point can an average person just abstract safely, can you say in philosophy? I don't even know what that means. I don't even know what abstract safely is. If you mean utilizing complex jargon from these things, you got a lot of work ahead of you. Whoever stops in this gateway is alone capable of grasping the circular structure of eternal time. Stopping in the gateway is a weird statement. Because again, it's in moment. How do you occupy a moment? There is no moment. Find me the moment that something is being cut. That doesn't exist. Take a photo of it. It's a snapshot. It's not being cut. You only know it's being cut because the scissors in the paper were less cut before than they will be a moment later. But in the photo, nothing's happening. How do you be in that moment where this is the case? The past and future converge here. It's an impossible position. It's a position of absolute and total instability. You can't stop in the moment without a total contradiction of time as we kind of conceptualize it, right? So the knowledge of the eternal return and the eternal return itself somehow demands a perspective outside of time. The knower is able to remain aware of time or even within time, but they need to stop in there. What the fuck? And this is Zarathustra elaborates this, and it's not really an intellectual comprehension of this. Instead, it's clear what he's doing is Zarathustra's trying to instill, like a Zen koan, an almost existential crisis moment. You can have these sort of things as they come along, but it plays in a unique way. The undergoing of the transformation at the gateway is the point, not standing back, right? So he says, but here, as in the aphorism, is the individual self who leaves and returns identical to itself being the sort of functional phrase. And this is the problem that undermines it. This is Klossowski retroactively sort of critiquing Nietzsche and sort of showing why Nietzsche continued to evolve his understanding or claims around the eternal return and the vicious circle. This is his critique of him, more or less. Most people would not start reading ancient philosophy like Plato and Aristotle. You should. Since Kant uses Aristotle and Deleuze uses Plato, Deleuze doesn't use Plato any more than Stephen Hawking uses Newton. Like that, it's just that's not really how this works. And there's a lot of critiques involved and sort of reflections of things. That's not really how it works. At what point should someone start to understand a philosopher? Probably never. Philosophers? You mean the concepts that they communicate, hopefully, because there's a difference between the philosopher and the concepts they communicate. So if you mean the concepts, then it takes a long time. It's a significant amount of work. I wouldn't even presume to say I understand Deleuze. I'd say I'm proficient at him in comparison to most. Understanding is a different beast. But for now, I'm going to stop getting stunlocked by chat. Because it's a reading. Fucking people. Okay. Here and in the aphorism, it is still the individual self who leaves and returns identical to itself. Here is the critique for Klossowski. This is the problem undermining these things. In Gay Science 341, the demon that appears, as well as Zarathustra's gateway in Zarathustra 3, I think. These things preserve the individual self. They absolutely talk about such things. They preserve the individual self. You, yourself, is something the demon actively says. Zarathustra is talking to you and talks about you and you and you. The you who hears the doctrine must be the you who exists eternally. It's part of the demon's bargain. Well, we've already seen that Nietzsche's already blown that away. Klossowski has absolutely sort of extrapolated and shown that that's not a thing here. So if the doctrine preserves personal identity, which it does, Klossowski has argued that entirely, how can the same self return? Dissolves you, but you return. This becomes sort of him. I read this. Well, let me finish. There's a link between the parable and the will's cure through rewilling of the past, except that it does not carry any conviction. As he's going through this, he's making sort of final statements on, as I read it, the tension between the claim that there is all configurations, the cosmological side of it, all configurations must recur. There is the existential demand that you must affirm this return, as we saw not just Zarathustra, but also the way the demon talks about you and you and you, returning and over. And again, the implication at an ontological level, who basically affirms that you dissolve, right? Sunday said you could not read all the background. I'm not getting stunlocked by chat anymore. I'll do a stream later today, maybe tonight, and we can discuss that if you want, Intellectual Joker, but I'm not doing that right now. So these are the things he's pulling out. And as we sort of make our way to the next little bit here, which is, there's a bunch of little shorter paragraphs here, and I'm kind of going to do my best to, explicate as we make our way through each one of them, because they're all very pointed, and they're all making very particular points. But the thing to be watching as we make our way through, and I'll stop and I'll take questions about 2 seconds here. The thing as we make through here, like all of this, is to be thinking about what Klossowski's pulling out of each one of these elements, how they're interplaying, and how he's ultimately using this to build his, not just his critique, but his explanation of what is happening here. Is everyone following that? I'm hoping. And then we'll do questions. So we'll do questions there, and I'll let it sit for a second. Yeah. Because that's the eternal return. Is it claiming actual recurrence of the cosmos? Or is it just a thought experiment? Right? Like this is what he's teasing out through all of this. Does everything return? Like cosmically, every single thing? Or is it only what can be affirmed? I have my opinions, by the way. Very strong ones. These things are what he's going to be playing through sort of as we go. And as we get into finishing this off, because this section is basically going through his building of all of the parts and all the times Nietzsche brought up the eternal return, the eternal occurrence, the vicious circle, whatever you want to call it. It's all of these times that he talked about these concepts and these ideas. And Klossowski's going to be developing a way that we can talk about how it actually functions, that it is not a cosmological doctrine. If you've been paying attention, you might have already heard him do that. He's going to explicate it extremely in detail through the rest of this book. But that's kind of what's happening here. Does that make sense for everyone? Good. So I will now answer your fucking question, Intellectual Joker. Sunday said you cannot read the background material even for Kant. You can't read all background material. Like, again, what does that even mean? This just became exponentially higher after him. An example I can give is reading Hegel to understand. Look, you can read Das Kapital and have a decent understanding of Das Kapital. You can read Marx and understand Marx. I'd recommend with Das Kapital reading all of Marx's other works, which help understand how Das Kapital functions. Right? If you want to really understand Marx, understand his critique of Hegel. How do you understand his critique of Hegel? Because he basically, he does the Hegel thing, but he fucks with it almost entirely. But he's playing with and critiquing Hegel. So yes, understanding Hegel will help you understand Marx. And by the way, reading Hegel will help you understand Deleuze. Why? Well, because the things they're tarrying with and playing with and fucking with are actually playing about registers. And to understand registers, you have to understand categories. To understand categories, you really do need to have a grasp of Kant. Wouldn't hurt to have an understanding of Leibniz. This spider web of information that is all of these things can best be, again, described as, I would go back to Counter-Strike. I could go back to video games. I could go to Star Wars. I can just watch the first Star Wars movie and enjoy it. But I cannot have a real discussion about anything in that with these other fucking people. All these fans. But I also don't have to watch literally everything to enjoy Star Wars. Will I grasp every little detail? Will I know TK421 as a character? Will I get that reference? No. But other people do. Do I want to? Maybe not. I don't give a fuck. Star Wars. If you want to go down that road, great, do it. Can you do the reading behind the ideas? Can you do reading behind the reading? It's ironic to understand recursive reference in the eternal return. It is ironic to understand irony in an ironic reference to the recursive reference of the eternal return. That can go on, by the way, forever. That just goes. It just goes on and on. There's a recursion. We'll get there, but that's actually going to be part of what Klossowski is going through. We're going to do a couple of paragraphs. I'm going to read through them real quick. And we're going to do groups of these. So we'll do this next little bit. The aphorism here is from Gay Science 341. Okay. Yet the aphorism declares, in rewilling, the self changes. It becomes other. This is where the solution to the riddle lies. Zarathustra is seeking a change, not in the individual, but in its will, to rewill the non-willed past. This is what the will to power would consist in. But Nietzsche himself dreams of a completely different kind of change, a change in individual behavior. The rewilling of the past, if it is only an assumption of the non-willed by the will, as a creative recuperation in the sense that fragment and riddle and dreadful chance are reconstituted in a significant unity, nonetheless remains at the level of a voluntarist fatalism. My screen is glitching? Really? Is anyone else seeing that? Is my screen share glitching in Discord? I'm not seeing it in mine. Weird. Not sure what to say. I'll try to keep it up and live then. I try not to have OBS on top of other stuff, because then I just stare at my face and I just regret what I look like. But that's fine. Screen good in Discord. All right. The aphorism 341 declares, in rewilling, the self changes. It becomes other. This is a kind of a big deal. The way Nietzsche specifically is sort of shifting these things when he's talking in Zarathustra, it is about the choice of the will. It is about the will to do things that wills, and somehow to will things that didn't will, it, blah, blah, paradox, blah, blah. Nietzsche's explicit cosmological formulation through all of this, as we're talking, somehow is able to preserve identity. But his experiential descriptions, so like the cosmological, the Zarathustra, right? But his experiential versions, where he's talking about like what it's like to go through it actually, not the doctrine from the outside, but like the thing itself. In the gay science, it's the demon who visits in the night, right? The difference is one doesn't involve transformation. The Zarathustra one doesn't. It basically is saying things will be as they will, amor fati, which is, we're going to get into sort of Klossowski's take on that. But accept your will, love your fate, love what fate has wrought for you. But there's a difference here. With the gay science aphorism, there's a change. There's a shift, specifically where you become other. The self that specifically re-wills the past doesn't remain the same. They become other. This is very different than the gateway parable and how the individual is preserved but learns to accept differently, right? This distinction is the big deal. This is the thing. As we're sort of making our way through it, the becoming other is very important to understanding that one doesn't return the same. How one is changed when thought as part of the eternal return, when the thinker goes through and transforms and is transformed by the eternal return. This doesn't happen through decision or affirmation. This is not a choice the will makes. The will doesn't do a thing and it happens to, and aren't you lucky you made the right choice? Which again, very anti-Nietzschean generally, especially his later works, because the self doesn't choose things. Instead, the way thought is formed by and changed by the eternal return, the way the self is changed, this happens to thought. This happens to the self entirely. And again, it has to do with what exactly we're talking about when it's what is kept, what is all of that. Because as he says, Zarathustra is seeking a change, not in the individual, but in the individual's will, to re-will the non-willed past. This is what the will to power would consist in. This is what the will to power would consist in. And that's Zarathustra for sure. If you haven't read it, it's really focused on sort of the misunderstanding I think a lot of people have of the Stoics, for example. It's talked the same. This is why like Jordan Peterson and all these right-wingers love this shit. It's why like Essential Salts end up in his sort of reactionary readings, that the will, that we are powerless to the will. We are powerless to the will. And that we need to just accept what it does. But of course, we're made by the will, so if we can't, then the will is making us not accept it. So, and this is kind of the problem with Zarathustra's like project. And this is the thing. For him, he wants the will to learn a new capacity, right? The transformation operates on the will itself, not on the individual. By learning this new capacity, the ability to will retroactively, to transform it was into thus I willed it, the creative affirmation of the things that were unwilled. This is about how this right here is how we sort of connect the will to power to the eternal return. Power itself here consists in extending the will's domain backwards through time. Fate seemed alien in this context. It's granted, I'm speaking more emotionally at this point, but like fate seemed othery, alien, is now incorporated though in the will's self-understanding. Somehow the things we didn't will, that will didn't do, now will accept. The non-willed past, it becomes, the paradox of itself is unresolvable. And for Klossowski, it's insufficient because, again, it presumes a steady subject doing the willing that survives the entire thing, right? There was a small screen. That's funny. Let me take a look and see what's happening here. I'm not sure. I'm not seeing anything. Do I have any other sources? Do I have other sources of things, maybe? Maybe. It is like trying to explain a push. That's not a bad way to put it. It's not a bad way to put it. It might be my highlighter acting up. I haven't been highlighting this because I'm drinking my tea and I'm not in the mood. But whatever. We'll continue. Re-willing presumes a steady subject that does willing. This puts agency of the subject not only in centrality to everything, but it gives it a quasi-causal sort of state. And Klossowski kind of refuses this because for him, it's like Nietzsche's entire point is about the self. Because as he says, Nietzsche himself dreams of a completely different kind of change, a change in individual behavior. The re-willing of the past, if it is only an assumption of the non-willed by the will as a creative recuperation, sense of a fragment, blah, 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 remains nonetheless at the level of a voluntarist fatalism. Nietzsche wants, and his entire oeuvre, I think you could easily argue, is very focused on the idea of behavior changing, not simply one's attitude towards it. This is, again, people's misreading of Nietzsche is the same as their misreading of the Stoics. And it tends to be the same reactionary thing. Just accept it, be manly, don't be emotional, don't be changed by things. And it's like, that's not really what Nietzsche is going for. Though the entire thing that we're talking about is visible, measurable transformation in how one acts in the world. This is not interior re-accepting and then nothing changes. It is an exterior manifestation. This is the materiality of it. That the eternal return is not an idealistic category. Nietzsche is not an idealist. And if all you're talking about is just the ideas of things and the emotions changing, but nothing externally, you're kind of missing the entire point. This is not purely a psychological internal solo transformation. And this is one of the things that as he goes through, he says, and he's sort of showing that Nietzsche is developing it very much in this direction as he's sort of realizing these sort of mistakes or changes or ways that he's sort of saying it. When he says, the re-willing of the past, if it is only an assumption of the non-will by the will as a creative recuperation, nonetheless remains at the level of a voluntarist fatalism, is really dense. It's a lot, but it is him basically stating, as I just said, you're choosing that there is this voluntary way to accept fate and to just allow things as it goes. And that's fine. And everything is fated and hey, just accept it. And Nietzsche is not saying that. Amor fati doesn't mean change nothing except the world as it is. Nietzsche would certainly not advocate. I would be stunned if someone who had really read Nietzsche, not just someone who's read Jordan Peterson, read Nietzsche, said that Nietzsche's big thing was like, hey, accept that things are shitty. It's cool. It's not Nietzsche. And so, to me, this is one of those things that rings really hard for me, like really good. Non-willed, is that a negative thing? Something that doesn't exist? No, no. Non-willed, for example, would be how you don't understand what that means. That's a non-willed thing. You didn't will a lack of understanding. The non-willed is just how you're confused. You didn't will that. It's fine. Couple ways to handle this. You can consider, oh, well, it's on me for not understanding it. I haven't spent the time. I should have done that. Oh no, I'm going to beat myself up. If only I could go back in time. Oh no, I can't go back in time. I hate the world. That kind of shit. Don't do that. The second thing you could do is you could go, hey, I didn't do it, but you know what? I don't understand it, and that's cool. And you accept it. Avoir fati does mean love of fate in a future-oriented way. It doesn't mean it like that. Doesn't mean it like that. Nietzsche, and again, I literally am saying how he. Okay, I'm going to be done responding now to chat. God damn it. It's hard for me to tell if someone's coming through this, like genuinely wanting to learn, or if they're just wanting to pretend like they know their shit. It's very frustrating. The contradiction of amor fati that is baked into it, and this is the same paradox that exists and the bullshit that exists with modern understanding of the stoicism of voluntarily being fatalist, is itself embarrassing as a concept to consider. Because if you don't, then you're also fine. That's not it. You're still talking about subject and object. You're still talking about active and passive. You're still talking about these binaries that Klossowski has already shown. Not only is Nietzsche fighting against, but Klossowski and Deleuze and others have completely blasted away. We're not having these conversations. Transformation has to exceed these categories on every side. Period. There's no way to go about it. That's just it. So that's why he goes on. The change in the individual's moral behavior is not determined by the conscious will, but rather by the economy of the eternal return itself. Under the sign of the vicious circle, it is the nature of existence itself, independent of human will, and hence individual actions as well, that is intrinsically modified. We'll get to the note in a second. Because it's him basically restating this via Nietzsche. But the phrasing here is important. The change in the individual's moral behavior is not determined by the conscious will, but rather the economy of the eternal return itself. Economic systems function through forces that are impersonal. No one makes the economy, as much as the right-wingers want it to be the case. That is not it. That is not what happens. Instead, it is about structural necessities, not individual decisions. The eternal return, likewise, operates economically. It redistributes, it circulates, it transforms, and it does this without a singular conscious intention behind it, without conscious intention at all behind it. Because it is not a doctrine to be believed. It is not an imperative, which the gay science implies, to be obeyed. Right? It's none of those things. That's not how it plays. Instead, it's a mechanism. It's a machine. It is a system that modifies experience and existence, whether or not it is being willed at all. The change in behavior, the moral behavior, the change in the individual's moral behavior that he's talking about here is an effect of ontological transformation, not ethical choice. Intellectual Joker, your question fundamentally is not how this book works and not how desire functions. So, like, way, way off. Like, it's just, and it's not a thing I'm going to spend 2 hours explaining. You're welcome to join our Anti-Oedipus reading. Starts next week, so we can talk about desire better. next week, Tuesday, we start our 4th reading of Anti-Oedipus, which I'm excited for. The economy of the eternal return is going to be really important. Klossowski is going to go on to write a phenomenal book called Living Currency, which if you want to have a conversation about the economy of the eternal return, there you go. Like that's it. Economic exchange transforms value. That's the function of it. That's what it does. And it doesn't matter if someone's choosing it to happen or not. It's outside of any individual and sort of any personal choices. The eternal return circulation transforms existence independent of the will that doesn't actually bring it about, that it sort of fucks with. So he says in his notes, this is the quotes from Nietzsche, right? And I dig these. These are great. My consummation of fatalism. 1, through the eternal return and preexistence, and 2, through the liquidation of the concept of will. I'm going to read the next little bit. A fragment from Silmarie, dated August 1881, states, "The incessant metamorphosis. In a brief interval of time, you must pass through several individual states. Incessant combat is the means." Nietzsche's intention goes far beyond any explicit formulation. This is going to be this is going to be ongoing. We'll be kind of seeing this as we happen. Yeah, Anti-Oedipus isn't doing that either. Exactly, Estelle. The explicit formulations that he's put in of the gateway or of the demon. The phrasing, my consummation of fatalism, through the eternal return preexistence, through the liquidation of the concept of will. There's 2 mechanisms he's putting in play here. He's literally stating his consummation of fatalism. And it's like this ridiculous form that Nietzsche's best writing like doesn't touch into. The 2 mechanisms he's got, and this we're going to be talking about this, through the eternal return and preexistence. Eternal return plus preexistence is the first bit here. This is not about future recurrence. That's literally like how everyone takes these fucking things. That ain't the deal. I'm timing you out, intellectual joker. I don't know what's happening with you. Just spamming questions. I have no interest. I already said we're not doing that today. It is not just what, again, stating in brief, my consummation fatalism. 1, through the eternal return and preexistence. These 2 together is basically the opposition of what we've read before. And the second is the liquidation of will. The concept of will. The dissolution, liquidation. The specific phrasing that Nietzsche used for this is Liquidierung, German fucking thing. But it's like elimination or abolition of the will itself. So specifically as he's driving at this, there is no voluntarist or even will-based reading. There's no will to power formulation as far as Klossowski's concerned. He's going to be going through this in a second, but that is the big deal for Klossowski. He's running through this. This is about impersonal forces. This is about intensities. This is about a sort of a transformation that comes automatically. And he immediately dives into the next little bit where he says, a fragment from Silmarie states, the incessant metamorphosis. In a brief interval of time, you must pass through several individual states. Incessant combat is the means. This is famous passage, because again, the thing that happened to Silmaria was his break, the break of the eternal return, the experience of it. Curry Techo's spot on. This fragment is, as and we'll talk about it in time, the fragment comes from Silmarie when this break happened. This is not after he has intellectualized it and turned it into Zarathustra, not after he's intellectualized it and turned it into the aphorism of the demon in the gay science. This is not towards some final form, but instead, like within that flux, within that thing, within that incessant metamorphosis, as he calls it here, because there is no stable endpoint, not progression towards a final form, not a Hegelian singularity, or that the caterpillar is destined to be a butterfly or fated to be a butterfly, but instead a fluxion through configurations, that you must pass through several individual states, right? No, that's a singular you. You dissolve into multiple states. There's none privileged as a thing. Goddard, you don't understand what we're talking about. Seriously, YouTube is just awful today. I'm going to be minimizing you. Usually I try to pay attention, but that's just terrible today. Again, you must pass through several individual states. Incessant combat is the means. Struggle, and antagonism, an agonistic existence or relation. That's what produces metamorphosis and change. It is not a peaceful synthesis, but instead violently colliding forces. The lived experience of the eternal return that is being outlined here. And we're going to get into as Klossowski sort of elaborates this. But like the thing that he's getting at here is that like existing as a continuous passage through differentiated states drives a different type of thing, because will to power is the contestation of drives. But here within the eternal return, there isn't really a unified subject. It is simply the combating itself. Probably best, like, we're going to be going through, and again, this is Klossowski's phenomenology of sorts. He's built his phenomenology out of a series of intensive states. He thinks intensive existence is the base of all of it. That's the setup. It's not wildly far from a handful of other people. And again, phenomenology doesn't really cover it. It doesn't work for a bunch of reasons, but that tends to be the reference people use. But that there is no underlying substance. The whole point is that it's singular states that continually succeed each other. This is the push. And this brief interval of the eternal return, this is one of my favorite sentences, so we're going to take a little bit of time on it. What is this brief interval? Not just any moment of our existence, but the eternity that separates one existence from another. The brief interval, fucking, I love the phrasing here, isn't short, right? It is eternity. What appears momentary from the temporal or extensive perspective is infinite within the perspective of the intensive. Between one existence and another, that thing between life and death, right, is eternity. The infinite detour through all possible configurations before returning. The gateway parable can be reinterpreted through this. I think he actually does this very shortly, but I'm still doing it because the paths forward and back, all of that, the paths separated by eternity are the brief interval. Time here, again, non-linear, intensive, but it's not looping. It's not really. It's the circle. It's a moment. And every moment contains this eternity when you experience just the intensivity of things rather than the extensivity of things. The moment inscribed on the gateway is both instantaneous flash, but also eternal duration. The secondary understanding of time for Deleuze, aeon and chronos. Again, old Stoics as a thing. Bergson might be a little familiar here, but this is the whole thing, right? Personal identity dissolves. So we end up with sort of several individual states that exist across this eternity. The metamorphosis happens within, around eternity as eternity. The metamorphosis is eternity. It is not a temporal succession. Understanding it as step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, wrong. It is not that. It is blech at once. They're together. Combat never stops here. The Nietzsche's the mind being the battlefield of the intensive, the flux of all of that. There is no final resolution to the battle. It's not how it works. And every moment thus contains potential for eternal and total transformation. Kind of a big deal. This is like setting up Klossowski's entire ontology for all of his work, and it's really amazing when he says these things. I love his ability to write just very clear prose. Well, very complex prose, I should say, that just says things concisely and smartly is just great. Just great. Because you might ask, you might be like, so wait, which moment? It's like, oh, it's all of them. So you're already doing this. You're already doing this. Stupid question. No such thing, Olivia. Should we also think of eternity as beyond a singular lifespan, all of the intensive forces prior to birth? Eternity is, that's actually an interesting, well, I mean, so yeah, I mean, the answer would be eternity, all time, everywhere, period. The eternal. That's the eternal return, the eternity. Yeah, I'd say that. Yeah. There's a bunch of different fragments where Nietzsche sort of talks about this and goes through these things. But I think when we talk about the instant and eternity, I think it's important. Oh, Suresh, thank you very much for $10. This reminded me of Nabokov's line from Speak Memory, the cradle rocks above an abyss. And common sense tells us that our existence is but a brief crack of light between two eternities of darkness. Every moment is that. Memory, from Speak Memory. The cradle rocks above an abyss. Common sense tells us our existence but a brief crack of light between two. This would again be mistaking this point, though, because it is that every single moment we have, every moment, is this. It's a different beast than that. This is not a before and after. This is this Bergson. Bergson, I think, did a really fantastic job talking about like the eternal in duration and simultaneity, because it's the difference between mathematical time and durée. His concept there. I think Deleuze goes through this at length too. Deleuze does an amazing job. Wait, so the eternal here isn't just like the set of all moments, but more so just like always? No. That's again presuming that is working within a temporal understanding that we're able to put in mathematical time. It's all moments. It's all moments. And it's always happening. It's all moments. We'll get there. Don't worry. It's difficult to understand. It is difficult to understand. We're not, you shouldn't be understanding right now. That's not where you shouldn't be like, Oh, I get it. Cool. We're done. Thanks. It's not where we're at. We're not doing that yet. Right. We'll be getting somewhere, hopefully by the end of the book, but we are still in the building up. The next two little paragraphs, I think, are going to be the jam for this. We're going to go through two of these smaller, because they're smaller, and I think that works. It tends to work kind of nicely. Will there be another live stream at Anti-Oedipus? Yeah, that's what every one of these Anti-Oedipus Tuesday streams are going to be. You don't want to be there next time to correct me? I want to be corrected. Feel free. That's the whole point. So please do every Tuesday. There's a lot happening here, and it is not just simply saying all moments either. I'm oversimplifying. Again, to just take that line. This brief interval. In a brief interval of time, you must pass through several individual states. What is this brief interval? Not just any moment of our existence, but the eternity that separates one existence from another. It is an exceptionally brilliant line, and it's intended to be grand and extreme, and it is. I don't have a way of saying otherwise. It's just wild as a thing to state, and it's genuinely the absolutely radical ontological move that Klossowski's making. Existence is intensive fluctuation, and where this is happening, this existence, temporal distinctions of before and after, or brief and eternal, or this and that, skinny, fat, big, tall, whatever. These things don't really apply because we're always already undergoing this metamorphosis across eternity. It's always eternal. This is the circle. This is happening as an oscillation in your existence constantly, but also always and also for eternity. I don't have, again, this is not an easy thing to communicate. That's the best sentence on it, I think. I love that line. What indicates that the re-willing has as its object a multiple alterity inscribed within an individual? If this is the incessant metamorphosis, it explains why Nietzsche states that pre-existence is a necessary condition for being as such of the individual. Sorry, my tea's making me yawn. I don't know why. This is was up way too late. The incessant combat would indicate that the adherent of the vicious circle must henceforth practice this multiple alterity, but this theme will be taken up later when Nietzsche envisions a theory of the fortuitous case. Multiple alterity. The re-willing has as its object a multiple alterity inscribed within an individual. The word is meant to be very, very, very literal. The combination, the multiple alterity. As an individual, any individual, right? The re-willing has as its object a multiple alterity inscribed within an individual. This means not one other, not one alterity, alterity. But there's multiple othernesses that exist somewhat simultaneously within what appears as an individual. Inscribed within this is not about becoming other. That's one-to-one, right? We've had that phrase throughout here, becoming other. You've heard people say it's becoming other, but that's still one identity to another identity, one-to-one. This is not that. This is multiple alterities. The plural of alters, not a singular, plurals. Becoming others, or one of others, or becoming altered. The shift here, and it's, again, the words inscribed within the phrasing inscribed within an individual, to me is specifically playing on the way that this is not necessarily an externality, but instead an internality that is very much constitutive of the structure that we're playing with. The individual in this case, or the individual as we talk about it, is actually itself a multiplicity. This is Deleuze will call this a dividual, right? A divisible, divided individual, the dividual. Such a fucking good term. Because identity here is almost epiphenomenal. It is a surface effect that conceals the intensive multiplicity that is beneath, that is inscribed. Traditionally, when we talk about identity, traditionally when we talk about substances, we talk about substances that have variations. And as such, these differences that exist produce an apparent unity, the plural differences between them. But an individual doesn't have multiple alterities. It is itself multiple alterities that are stabilized as one. Multiple alterities inscribed within an individual. If this is the incessant metamorphosis, it explains why Nietzsche states that pre-existence is a necessary condition for being as such of the individual. If this is the incessant, never ceasing metamorphosis, if this is it, the rewilling has as its object a multiple alterity inscribed with the individual. If that is the incessant metamorphosis, this explains why Nietzsche states that pre-existence is a necessary condition for the being as such. Remember, pre-existence through the eternal return of and pre-existence. That's consummation of fatalism. Right? Following? Consummation of fatalism? Is everyone following? Huh? Explain that a little, please. Well, that, what do you mean by that? Well, I'm going to go through the entire sentence, obviously. Consummation of. Well, I'd have to actually go back to the fragment and like break apart what it means in German, because how it's being translated here, my consummation of it. One sec. Just let me see if I can find the original. One sec. I have to open my fucking PDFs now. One sec. Fucking PDFs. All right, now I have to sorry, I don't have my French version up all the time. All right, so consummation is actually an interesting. That's not how I would probably translate that, but I get it. I get why he does. Consummation here means in the sense of. It's not the colloquial. We tend to talk about the consummation of marriage, the bringing together of, which is close. It is the bringing to fulfillment is actually what consummation literally means. And that's the phrase, it's a Vollendung, that is actually used by Klossowski, which I'm assuming is because Klossowski would directly use these things. He spoke German. So the consummation here specifically means my perfection, my culmination, the bringing together of something to its final perfect state. Consummation of fatalism is him bringing his perfection of it, his figuring out of it. This is completed. And it's completed because, as he writes in the fragment, he's got two bits. He's got the first mechanism, which is the eternal return and pre-existence. And this seems like a nothing, like quick phrase, but it's really important because it's not just the Spinozist, everything is necessary. It is not just the accepting your fate or purely just, oh, accept your fate, live your fate. Not that shit. It is instead very much that you've lived this life infinitely many times. This is the pre-existence of the eternal return. There is no first time. Nietzsche is explicitly saying that you do not have, oh, this is my first time, and oh my God, oh, I get it. I've seen my eternal return. That's no. You're already within the cycle. You pre-exist within the space. It's almost a fatalism that is inescapable, because it is the very structure of existence. There is no first time through. Right? And the second, though, is his fucking with and shitting on other will, because he says he liquidates will. But it's dissolved here. It's fully abolished. There is no subject to resist or accept fate. There's no one left to love fate in that way. Basically, it's fatalism without someone who's fated. It's the necessity of necessity. It's the operation of necessity. I'd probably phrase it as that. It's that. So when he's bringing it together, he's saying that these are the things that, these are the things, as I'm reading it. These are the things. And so that's what Klossowski's pulling out. Glad it helps a lot. And it's worth going back and looking. That's actually it's an interesting choice, because consummation in English has such a, not a fun, it's not a direct word. Well, that's, Deleuze does this, in Guattari and Anti-Oedipus. And the third synthesis is the synthesis of consummation, consumption. And a lot of people presume that means fucking, because that's consummation. I see that a lot, but they very clearly state the opposite. It's much more in line with this. So it makes me wonder what consummation in French theory, where that, I mean, it's Kant. It's got to be coming from Kant. It's got to be coming from Kant. The bringing together, because it's a synthesis thing. That's interesting. I have questions. Doesn't matter. Saying the next bit. The incessant metamorphosis that explains why Nietzsche states that pre-existence is a necessary condition for being as such of the individual. Okay. Incessant metamorphosis. Remember, we're already there. It's pre-existing us, even understanding ourselves as a thing. There's no moment where you go, oh, my first time through. That's not it. It's already there. Pre-existence is there, and it's ontologically necessary, more or less, because we're not talking about a cosmological speculative thing. It's not claiming that you historically have lived this life. This is not reincarnation as a thing. This is fundamentally like a structural requirement for individuality as we kind of know it. The very being of individuality, being as such of an individual the being as such of an individual. Nietzsche states pre-existence is the necessary condition for this. The very being requires pre-existence. Well, it's actually, and it sounds wild, but it's, I think, again, my take on this, what appears as individual is actually like the condensation of all of these alterities that we were just talking about that exist across these infinite prior configurations. The individual is the gate, right? The intersection point of all of these pre-existing things that come together. This transformation of pre-existence to being, oh, that's before me. We've existed, I've existed before. All these things have come before me. The Platonic, these things exist outside of me, or the Hindu soul lives many lives thing. Shift that. Let's make it an ontological principle instead. Individuality requires multiplicity, and it requires prior multiplicity specifically. You can't be one without already having been many. The unified self presupposes a plurality behind it. We just had the line, you must pass through several individual states. This is a thing Nietzsche states many times. This is a thing that Klossowski's brought up. Those states that you pass through already existed. They weren't created in the eternal return for you. The eternal return isn't some new thing for you. The apparent individual has all of these things compressed and coexisting. Yeah. Yeah, I'd say. Yeah. And Nietzsche goes into this, the pre-existence of the world. He's got a huge thing on this in one of those fragment pieces. Let me see if I can pull it up. Because his later works, is he does so many things like this. I might go through it later. It's not popping up. Doesn't matter. I'm not going through it right now. That's fine. It's not a big deal. Not a big deal. I don't think anyone cares that much. All right, let me look a second time at YouTube chat before I put you back away. Translation should be good or is it bad? The translation's excellent. It's Daniel Smith. He's phenomenal. Translation is not an easy thing. You watch me on Tuesdays. Watch last Tuesday's stream on 2 days ago. Whole thing. Nightmare. Translation sucks. And if you tried Unpublished Fragments by Stanford, I've read a lot of them. They're $40 a piece. So give me money. I'll read it more. Give me money, give me money, give me money, give me money. Back to it. The incessant combat, which is a phrase Nietzsche uses here, would indicate that the adherent of the vicious circle must henceforth practice this multiple alterity. So someone asked in chat earlier, hey, what does that mean, incessant combat? This means that it's not a theoretical position. This means that you don't just like, oh, cool, I'm good, off you go. No, there is, and Nietzsche is very particular about how he uses these terms and talks about combat and all these ongoing things. You have to cultivate the multiplicity that constitutes you. That's the drive here. That's what he's pushing for. That Nietzsche is pushing this thing about valuing war. Why Nietzsche values war. It's not literal conflict that he really values. It's the agonistic relations between drives and impulses and perspectives that exist within the individual that is you at large. And so after grasping the eternal return, right, the revelation should change and does change how one lives. It doesn't do it by changing your moral code. You don't suddenly become like a Christ figure who's walking, like, that's not it. Instead, it shifts to you practicing an alterity, resisting stabilization fundamentally. Sort of it's repulsive. This idea of unified identity, that the flux of multiple personalities and perspectives. And I don't mean like a schizo. I shouldn't have said that. Why did I say that? These things come out. The flux of multiples should be embraced, and you should refuse conformity at large. But again, it's not a should, as in like, oh, you ought to, but in the revelation fundamentally changes how you live. How does one practice alterity? How does one practice this? How does one do this? That's what this book's about. We'll be getting there. But that's like the fundamental thing is like, from here, this thing happens and it fundamentally changes how you understand all of these things and how you act. And again, the incessant combat indicates adherence to vicious circle must henceforth practice this multiple alterity. But this theme will be taken up later when Nietzsche envisions a theory for the fortuitous case. The theory, what's the phrasing he's got? Theory of the fortuitous case. This is like late end of Nietzsche. I think end of Nietzsche. The accident, the contingent event, the fortuitous case. And we'll be taking that up. This is in the book. This is in this book. He doesn't like say a thing and then like go, fuck it. He's going to be going through it because the fortuitous case is the way that like things happen, right? Things happen. And they happen. There's like a strangeness to it, a randomness, a chance. And it's a worthwhile thing because it's this theme that he's talking about here is asking the question, singular individuals that seem to arise, right, from this mechanical necessity of the eternal return. How, if everything recurs and this law is happening, right, this thing is happening to everyone, this particular configuration, why this me? Why this particular, or you, or anyone else listening? Why this particular configuration? And the answer is a fortuitous case. The intersection contingent forces that produce singular events. Individuals are ultimately fortuitous cases. We'll get there, though. If you don't know fortuitous cases, we'll get there. If you do, you understand what I'm saying. Is there an ontology of the accident? Wink, wink. Yeah, I mean, yes. I think you're wrong. I'm certain I'm special. That's possible. You might be, you listening to me right now. You're the most important person who's ever lived. And we need you to wake up. You're in a hospital right now. You've been in a coma for 3 months. It seems like years, I know, but we've been sitting here playing shows for you. That's what you've been thinking and having. Please come back to us. All right, now that I've gotten rid of a handful of people, as they've had psychotic breaks, the next little bit. For these fragments also suggest a transfiguration of existence, which, because it has always been the circle, wills its own reversibility to the point where it relieves the individual from the weight of its own acts once and for all. What is at first sight the most burdensome pronouncement, namely the endless recommencement of the same acts and the same suffering, now appears as redemption itself, once the soul realizes that it has already lived through other individualities and experiences, and thus is destined to live through even more, which deepen and enrich the life that it knows, the only life that it knows, hit unk et nunc, here and now. Those that have prepared for the present life, and those that the latter is preparing for others, remain totally unsuspected by consciousness. The fragments that he's referencing, it's the things that open this little section we just read, there are little bits right there. These fragments introduce many new elements for developing the thought of the vicious circle. The fragments reveal things that other texts, as Klossowski's talking about, sort of fail to get into them. And they're important. They're deeply important because they're very much more attached to the evental nature of this, or the experience of this. It's the thing. The fragments reveal what these other texts conceal or subordinate or pave over. The radical dissolution of the subject, the liquidation of will, and the necessity or pre-existing necessity that sort of comes into this. And all of these things, by the way, super important for most of these other thinkers. Anyone else we've got on the server, pretty much all this shit is super important for. And because the new elements is a lot. It's a lot. So when we move on, these fragments suggest a transfiguration of existence. Fuck. There's a lot here. Sorry, I don't know why I keep looking over at chat. Goddamn fucking chat. I get stun locked into you YouTubers. It's shocked. I know you probably are just stunned that Brooks is mentally non-normative. Why would he be mentally non-normative? No clue. I'm going to go ahead and fucking close this window again. Keep getting stun locked, you motherfuckers. Tiring. All right. The fragments, because it has always been the circle, the pre-existing is the big deal here. The transfiguration of existence, because it has always been the circle, wills its own reversibility to the point where it relieves the individual from the weight of his own acts once and for all. It's not simply a liquidation of will that's happening here. It is happening. That is the thing that he mentions, but it's not just straight up like, oh, it's cool. All right, off we go. Next thing. It's not that. There is a fundamental shift here of like ontological status of all of these things. The eternal return is not something that will happen to you. It is not something that I or Nietzsche or you have chosen. It's the structure of existence. We are in this circle. We're in this circle. That's what pre-existence of the world means here. The circle is not primordial. No, circle is primordial. Yeah, primordial, sorry. The circle is primordial. It is not that it is imposed on the primordial. This is, again, anti-Oedipus desire. The functioning of these things pre-exists us and builds us, and it's not that we have this moment coming where you're going to be suddenly understanding of it, and then retroactively it shifts. No, it's not that. It is that this is happening all the time. This is, I've talked about Satori, the idea of Zen enlightenment or Taoist enlightenment, and the thing that is consistent amongst all the Taoist masters is not drastically different language than this, and I like how they put it. I'm going to use it. The problem you have is that you're already enlightened, you just don't realize it. And that is not far off from this. This is the point for this, that it's already there and already the part and parcel structure of all of these things. It has always been the circle. Because of this, it wills its own reversibility to the point where it relieves the individual from the weight of its own acts once and for all. Again, the individual doesn't will shit. It's the obliteration of will. We've already talked about that. Instead, experience, which is part and parcel of this and built into this, experience itself wills its own reversibility. Agency changes here and shifts here. No longer the individual, but instead to the circle or existence or whatever that is. The circle is willing its own reversibility. It has the capacity to it. It can do all of these things. It will to power at like a cosmic level, right? Existence that wills its own eternal return. It's the necessity driving itself. His phrasing relieves the individual from the weight of his own acts once and for all. Instead of making acts, therefore, infinitely heavy, right? Which is if you've read a lot of work on the eternal return, you've seen people make the claim that that's how important every choice you make is, because you're going to do it a million times. The weight of every choice makes it infinite. Klossowski's doing the opposite. The eternal return makes them like weightless, without heft, without like terror, without any of these things. Because if you've already committed all of these acts infinite times, and you will infinite times, and again, you didn't will this, these are not your will. These are not your acts. These are not you as an individual. This is instead the necessity of the circle, the re-willing that is constantly happening. Completely different beast. It's a completely different beast. It's a completely different beast. It's a completely different beast. Which at first sight, the most burdensome pronouncement, namely the endless recommencement of the same acts and the same sufferings, now appears as redemption itself once the soul realizes it has already lived through other individualities and experiences and thus is destined to live through even more, which deepen and enrich the only life that it knows here and now. That's a lot. That's a lot of a sentence at once. The eternal return transfigures everything from unbearable to redemptive in this sense. I kind of just went through it. Klossowski's going, I think, a bit deeper. What seems to be the greatest trial, or talked about as such, is actually our salvation. The surface level, at first sight, surface level reading of this brings about the most burdensome pronouncement. The endless recommencement of the same acts, the heaviness of all of these things. You'll be doing them forever, the curse of eternal saveness. But with this inversion, and it's a hell of a fucking inversion. It's a fucking crazy one. But it shifts. And suddenly instead of thinking about like, oh, consciousness experiences this now as curse, it'll do it over and over. It shifts. The illusion of personal identity, gone. The weight of individual responsibility, gone. The fiction of things as being autonomously agentic, gone. The eternal return redeems these things by dissolving the subject who would be burdened in the first place. This is not the redemption of an individual soul, as in Christianity or in right-wing politics or any of this. It's redemption from individuality. The burden believing you are a responsible individual as a thing. It's gone. The relief is found in that. So he goes on, once the soul realizes it has already lived through under individualities and experiences, and thus is destined to live through even more, which deepen and enrich the only life that it knows here and now. I kind of like this a lot. It is not saying that the other lives it will live is the same soul. That's not the point. The soul is the multiplicity here, right? Consciousness trying to nullify it, singularize it, and destroy it. The soul doesn't maintain identity across these lives. That's not it. Instead, it's many lives that will be had. It's a little you getting inscribed in there, or they're inscribed in you. There's a thing happening where this lack of fixed identity continually being transformed through different configurations is these different lives. And these different lives are set to enrich the only life that it knows. The only life that it knows is the life here and now. Hit ek nunc is old phrase, obviously for language, but it's meant to be like, again, talking about the here and now. This is the temporality of it, the odd paradoxical side of it. The soul that exists, the you that is experiencing things right now, knows this life and only this life here and now. All the other individualities that you have lived or you will live, they deepen and enrich this life, the knowledge of them. The knowledge of them. How can past lives you don't remember and future lives that haven't happened yet enrich you? Well, they exist now. They exist in that eternity between these things. They virtually and intensively within the present configuration, they're already here. The details that have outlined and you get to call, oh, that's that life. Here's this configuration. Well, those intensities are still here. They're all here. They add the depth and complexity and richness of experience intense, incredible levels. This life is richer because it contains these multiplicities. You are not just you. You are an intersection of infinite individualities. Because you may only know your present life, but you contain infinite ones. Not the external configuration of them, but the intensities of them. All of them. And so we have that moment from earlier where it's like the brief interval is the eternity that separates one existence from another. That is the now, that hit at nunc, that is the brief interval that right now contains every eternity. Everything compressed in it. Not the externalities, but the intensities. Those that are prepared for the present life, those that the latter is preparing for others, remain totally unsuspected by consciousness. Those individualities, those that are prepared for the present life. He's referring to like past individualities here that have prepared for the present configuration and future ones that this configuration is preparing for. These together remain unsuspected by consciousness. Past individualities are not separate lives. They're stages in a process, but they're not connected that deeply, but they are. Just don't go too deep in thinking about how they're intertwined, but it's stages in a process. And those stages in a process leads to this configuration. Hit ek nunc, right? Every prior configuration created conditions for the next. This is not a linear causative thing, though. This is intensive. Past states are always virtually present in current state. The latter is preparing for others. This present life, hit ek nunc, this present life, is not an endpoint. It is a transition, preparing for future individualities that are coming. Already there. You're already in the process of becoming others, becoming something through whatever. Consciousness does not recognize this. You are the patina on top of the turbulence. These things remain totally unsuspected. Consciousness doesn't have a concept of this. It has no idea of these things, about this process underneath it. Consciousness experiences things as a unified, autonomous individual. It is unaware that it is a product of these prior individualities, that it's currently preparing infinite more in the future, and that it contains alterity at a massive multiplicity within itself. It's completely unsuspecting. It's an ignorance of what constitutes itself. And there's a reason, by necessity, more or less. It has to be ignorant of these things in order to function from a unified perspective, in order to have the ability to have your left and right hand be able to do things together. That alone, doing this, is fucking weird. But you are unified. You have to be in order to be able to do this. Because otherwise there's a multiplicity of all these things. That consciousness thing exists. Your consciousness has to be there. Because the moment it realizes or considers elsewise, it dissolves. So the multiplicity has to remain unconscious for consciousness to exist. We're going to do one more paragraph because I really, really, really like it. Because it speaks to sort of a little bit more of the experience of the experience. I really, really like it. So we're going to do that. Let me look at YouTube one more time. There's 40 people I'm not looking at. There we go. That's a happy day. Many people still see eternal return as the highest way to responsibility in relation to future. Sure, that's great. Klossowski's better. To be clear, Klossowski is still about the eternal return metaphysical way. No. Nope. Nope. It is not that. That would be very... Maybe. I mean, you'd have to twist words. What do I mean by individuals? It's a Deleuzian concept. The idea of the multiplicity that you are an individual, undivided. You are an undivided, but there are divideds. Just like if you were to say the number 40, it's a number. There's 40. Kind of the same thing. More complicated than that, I just simplified it probably too much, and I probably am going to have people correcting me, so be it. I don't really care. That's fine. That's fine. So be it. Let's see. We're going to do this. Yeah, we're going to do the... All right. Unless there's a comment, question, or anything. Big understanders in chat today. Yes, there are, Suresh. Everyone's very, very clever. Rewilling is the pure adherence to the vicious circle. Rewilling the entire series one more time. Rewilling all experiences and all one's acts, but not as mine. This possessive no longer has any meaning, nor does it represent a goal. Meaning and goal are liquidated by the circle. Whence Zarathustra's silence, his interrupted message, unless it is a burst of laughter that conveys all his own bitterness. Love it. So, rewilling is not about pure, simple affirmation. Here we're actually getting to, no, that's not it. It's a little bit different. Rewilling is a little bit different here. Pure adherence, which is fucking great. Adherence, here meaning not necessarily, adhering to a doctrine, which is, again, I think how in English would take it apart. It is effectively the phrase he uses in French, which is a pure adhesion, but it's doing the thing. Adhesion, like sticking to. You're purely doing the thing, being bound to. Adhesion is probably better here. I don't have a lot of notes on like bad moments, but adhesion versus adherence, I'm hesitant to sort of adherence, but doesn't matter. Not really the point. Pure adhesion here that we're sort of playing with. You don't perform rewilling. You're already doing so. The circle is doing it. The circle has you. You do not have the circle. You are stuck to it. You are with it. You are not I choose or that there's any part of it. Pure adhesion. Pure attachment to is already happening to you, right? This is not that the will chooses to rewill the past. Rewilling is actually part and parcel of how the circle's necessity operates. So the circle itself does willing. You're adhering to the circulation. So this economy of the eternal return, which we went over 3 paragraphs ago-ish, whatever, the subjects adhere to this. And he says, rewilling all experiences and all one's acts, but not as mine. This possessive no longer has any meaning, nor does it represent a goal. The entire series one more time. This is one of those things. It's not picking and choosing parts. The entire series one more time. This is the whole sequence. The eternal return isn't an affirmation of the parts you like or the parts you don't or this part or that part. It's all or nothing. It's always eternally all of it. And one more time is playing, right? Rewilling the entire series one more time. One more time. He's pulling directly from Zarathustra. Because again, one more time. Oh, you're going to do it one more time. You're going to do a circle. Yeah, there we go. There you go. There you go. But that's not it, because it's not as mine. This possessive no longer has any meaning, nor does it represent a goal. You can't really say my acts when it's another individual, another soul, another whatever internal thing. My life, is it your life? Are you sure? You have some level of consistency, but really, is it your life? How does that work? Is it your experiences? When we talk about liquidating the will to power as a thing, as Nietzsche says, liquidate the will to power, as Klossowski's like rebringing out here, this is the point. Will is my will. People talk about this. It's impossible to get around this. People in chat are talking about desire as being your desire, like that there's like a post-personal existence of it. You can do that your ways, but again, this is the will concept as a thing and liquidating it. Look, if mine has no meaning, then will has no subject. Rewilling without mine is willing without willer. Willmaker. How does that fucking work? What is the fucking language we would use? Who cares? We don't give a fuck. That's the wrong way to read it for Klossowski. He's like, no. If the acts aren't mine, then the weight of them wouldn't fall on me. There's no subject to be there to do these things over and over and over to make these choose. The burden dissolves. The burden dissolves entirely. The burden dissolves. So this is a pretty radical setup. And it says, not only does it not have any meaning, it doesn't represent a goal. One of the things you'll hear all the fucking time with people who misread Nietzsche, and a lot of the Stoics, especially right-wingers, is they really, really, really love talking about how that will help you do X, Y, and Z. Because they then have an aim for something. They have a goal. So if you have a therapeutic view of Nietzsche, if you do these things, it'll help you become a better person. Oh, good. I have rewilling then as a goal of becoming healthy and happy. Oh, no, I have a rewilling as an ethical demand of what achieving Übermensch status means. Or I want to live a more authentic life, and rewilling will help me live a more authentic life. But that's impossible. Rewilling doesn't have a subject. So who's setting the goal? Rewilling doesn't have a future. So it doesn't work extensively. So future states of any sort, how is it doing that? It doesn't have a means to end relation functionally within it. Free will becomes nonsensical. So does determinism. All of it becomes nonsensical. That's the whole point, is sidestepping it entirely. It's all liquidated. Purposive, like realities, having purposes is gone. Rewilling is adhesion without purpose, without telos, without a why at the fundamentals of it. Meaning and goals are liquidated by the circle. Has to. Yeah, Nietzsche is telling you, hit the gym. Delete everything, hit the gym. There you go. When Zarathustra silence his interrupted message, unless it is a burst of laughter that conveys all his own bitterness. Zarathustra, throughout his writings, like, shuts up. Like, he disappears and falls silent a lot. His message is constantly interrupted. I like this reading of Zarathustra, by the way, because he's got a lot of teachings. The gate thing, we were talking about the gate, I think, earlier, right? The gateway parable. And someone interrupts him and says, all truth is crooked then. Zarathustra, fucks with him and then, interrupts the lesson, and the lesson disappears. The interrupted message is part of communicating this experience. Right? That's the thing. For Nietzsche, there is no way to deliver a totalized goal. The message requires meaning to convey. Teaching requires a goal. Both of these things are liquidated in Nietzsche's writings of what the circle is. It doesn't work this way. It is performatively contradictory. And it's one of the things literally in Zarathustra that is constant. He's always interrupted. He's always finding a way to not really state the final thing. He's never stating it. The whole point is that teaching in this way doesn't really work like that. If you think of the eternal return, you dissolve, you don't remain to teach. So Zarathustra makes himself become other. It turns like snake shit, he does weird shit because he can't. He can't finish it. And the line, unless it's a burst of laughter that conveys his own bitterness, is, I just like that. It's not happy laughter. Zarathustra wants to get these things across. He wants to teach people. He wants to do this, but the teaching itself liquidates itself. So he has to watch everyone misunderstand him constantly. Always. And he bitterly laughs at the impossibility of getting these things across. The bitterness comes from recognizing that this circle, the eternal return, means it will all recur. He will come back to these things again. These intensities will find ways of doing it. And that will include his failures and the misunderstandings others have of him. And he has to affirm even the failure. Even the failure. Laughter is fantastic as a thing in Zarathustra. He laughs all the time. And it's always with, there's a sardonic bitterness in it. Absolutely. I think. A lot of paragraphs referencing the Ubermensch. Where does that fit here? Literally, this is an entire book. So read the book. And so there's this, and we're going to get into it a little bit. It's not super deep, but I do like this thing, and we'll end the reading here because next is going to be literally the Ubermensch. Just so you know, Goddard. At this point, Nietzsche will return divided. The overman becomes the name of the subject will of power. It's literally the next paragraph. But now, because of that, we're not going to be reading that today. We'll get to it next week. I like his use of laughter here because it touches into the bodily response, the sort of bodily intensive dealings with the impossibility. And it's very much in, to me, my reading of Zarathustra as well. So this connects with me really hard. Deleuze touches into this, where he talks about laughter and philosophy, the laughter of philosophy. And it's not far from this either. It's a really good use of laughter in here. Bergson does the same thing, the nervousness or the death and all of that. It's really fascinating. Any last comments or questions before I bounce the fuck out and obviously adjust my cameras? It's a slight yellow tint in the room. I have no idea why it's blue. It's fascinating. That's okay. We'll figure it out. But if there's not anything more, I'll give it a moment while Organelles is typing. Everything I'm trying to grab this book, it dives even deeper. And it'll do that. So let's just actually go back to the table of contents. So we're in 3, the experience of the eternal return. Okay? Yes, we're only this far. We've got the crazy shit coming. Okay? The valetudinary states. I need to learn how to pronounce that word before we go much further in this book, clearly. The origin of the 4 criteria: decadence, vigor, gregariousness, and the singular case. Attempted scientific explanation of the eternal return. The vicious circle as selective doctrine. The consultation of the paternal shadow. The most beautiful invention of the sick. The euphoria of Turin. And by the way, euphoria Turin is everything. And then this last bit, which is very short, and it is actually, I think, a cap to the book. It's probably the best way to talk about it. He dives into a semiotic structure that Nietzsche built that, again, he's already hinted at. But everything here, it's hard for me to describe how absolutely this goes through all of this and then falls back on itself and explains itself over and over and over and over. I fucking adore this shit. I fucking adore this fucking book. If you can't tell, I fucking adore this book. But that'll be as far as I go today. And let's see, is there anyone who's live in an interesting way today? Is there anyone who's live? It looks like nobody is fucking live. What happened to YouTube? YouTube used to be like, there at least 2 people were live sometimes. What happened? Because the world's falling apart. You'd think someone would be live. Because I'm not doing politics content today. For a lot of reasons. A lot of reasons. A lot. And I think that's what we're going to do. I'm going to send you over to if you haven't been paying attention to what's happening in America, I'm just going to give you a minor version of it. Is Kid still protesting? Kid is, I think right now he's at home, but 2 or 3 hours he will be back down there. We're building up Operation Inflation to be going towards the Capitol, and we're trying to figure out as all of these other things happen. Minnesota, Minneapolis, the site of George Floyd, actually, and also the site of one of the recent killings by ICE. 2 more people were shot apparently last night by ICE. They're starting to use military tactics, and they're attacking random people. Just around who happen to be driving or going. They're just horrifying. There's absolutely video, and I have no reason to believe otherwise. Anyone who doubts it, I think you're a piece of shit. Of a 17-year-old at Target who mouths off, telling ICE to go fuck themselves, which is legal. Gets tackled, kid, minor, tackled by multiple people. Thrown in a car, arrested for attacking ICE, for assaulting ICE. That's what the Department of Homeland Security claimed. Yet miraculously, a block away was dropped off after being beaten and bloodied in the car. So, that's where we are. We live in the dystopia that Nazis made, and that people before us who are now Nazis made. And we need to understand that we are there, and there is no, there's no going back. There's no fighting this. We need to understand we are there, and how we go about this and how we resist and everything we do matters from here out, because we know what doesn't work. We've already been down this road. If you didn't know, we've been down this road. You can go look at history, and we can understand at large, people are not drastically different, generally speaking. So we've got work. We've got a lot of work. They arrested a minor for just insulting them. Well, they didn't technically arrest him because he was dropped literally off the side of the road, thrown out of the car, and bloodied. And he says tortured in the car, which given that it was 10 minutes and a drive a block away, I tend to believe they just basically shamed him, beat him for being mouthy, and then claimed he assaulted ICE, yet they also didn't press charges and also just let him go. So it's all lies, and that's where we're at. It's all lies. It's all just lies. And it's scary as shit. So I'm going to send you to Status Quo on YouTube. If you guys aren't familiar, Status Quo is wonderful work on the ground. They and Mercado Media, I think, have done an exceptional job of actually following around. Their Unicorn Unicorn Riot used to do during the sort of BLM protests, and after that, they did a very good job. Status Quo, I think, has really come into their own, and I'm really happy with them. So follow and join. If you like what I do, discord.gg/DGQC. You can come scream at me any fucking day of the week. I do not mind it. We'd love to have you here. We have a bunch of readings. If you want to learn about Nietzsche, you want to learn about Deleuze, it's a great place to do that. Don't expect to be able to do it inside of a week. Otherwise, if you like what I do and you want to support it, head over to Patreon, patreon.com/DGQC. $2 a month, $5 a month, whatever it might be, does an amazing job of giving me a little bit more of a consistent sort of path of money. So until then, I'll see you all soon enough. And I'm streaming a while.